Tonight, critical talking points as five party leaders face off in French. Rival views in a tight election race.
An absolute pressure cooker for everyone.
Hoping their words will translate into your vote. 18 months in and COVID rapid tests open doors from the classroom to the office.
We're just getting ready for all our employees coming back to work.
Easy to use, but not so easy to find. Plus, the art of joyful activism.
We are just trying to play a small role.
A Canadian movement where culture and compassion collide.
CTV National News with Lisa Laflamme.
Good evening. The carefully crafted messages on the campaign trail gave way to a few unscripted moments tonight on the debate stage. It's the second between parties and comes at a pivotal moment with just 12 days to go before the vote. 5 federal leaders, one spotlight in Gatineau, Quebec at the Canadian Museum of History. Tonight's French debate tackled climate, cost of living, Indigenous issues, justice and foreign policy, and of course, the pandemic, perhaps the greatest influencer of all. CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Joyce Napier on the hits and misses of tonight's debate.
It's the main event, a make-it-or-break-it moment for the 5 federal leaders, and when the 2 frontrunners are stuck in a two-way race, the stakes are even higher. Supporters and protesters were kept at a distance for the arrivals under tight security.
Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs.
The debate opened on a question that has dogged the Liberal leader.
Une élection non désirée.
Mr. Trudeau, you have triggered an unwanted election. Would you all promise to keep a working parliament going as long as possible if you are a minority government?
Oui, absolument.
A direct yes from the Conservative leader, while Trudeau said Canadians should have a right to choose.
Une raison égoïste.
You have triggered this election for selfish reasons, Jagmeet Singh told the Liberal leader. Healthcare was the first theme of the debate with a question from the public.
Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire?
What will you do to protect seniors, she asked. 5,718 people died in long-term care homes in Quebec. All leaders promised national standards and better financing.
On a effectivement politisé cette question.
On vaccine mandates, a wedge issue on this campaign, an issue that has been politicized. 80% of Canadians have been vaccinated, said Trudeau, adding he makes a distinction between those he calls anti-vaccination mobs and those who can't get vaccinated for medical reasons. And Justin Trudeau was asked how much vaccine doses have cost the federal government.
Un bon deal ou on s'est fait avoir?
A good deal or were we ripped off? A question Trudeau did not answer. These are contracts with private companies, he said. A long list of issues discussed, including climate change, Indigenous peoples, the cost of living, foreign policy, healthcare, and COVID-19. A mostly disciplined debate with some interruptions. The leaders are well prepared for these debates. Messages are tested and rehearsed because they can alter the course of a campaign. With tight races in almost 80 ridings, according to a Nanos poll, and 1 out of 10 Canadians still undecided, Lisa, this election is too close to call.
All right, Joyce, and we will do it all over again tomorrow night in English. Climate, of course, was a headline tonight. It's also been a leading topic on the campaign trail, with each party picking holes in the other platforms. In tonight's Truth Tracker, CTV's Richard Madden dives into the claim, hello, Richard, that emissions have actually gone up under Liberal leadership. Richard.
Yeah, well, Lisa, at tonight's debate, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh attacked the Liberals' track record on fighting climate change, zeroing in on what he believes is one of Justin Trudeau's biggest vulnerabilities. Watch.
This is an issue that we have to tackle head on. Mr. Trudeau said that he wants to reduce emissions. Every target has been missed.
Now, technically, Singh is right on a big one. The government's own numbers show Canada's greenhouse gas emissions have been mostly rising since Trudeau took office in 2015. Look at this graph. They dipped slightly to 707 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent in 2016, but have gone up every year since. Now, 2020 emissions aren't out yet, but they'll likely be lower because of pandemic lockdowns. As the debate raged on, Trudeau dismissed Singh's attacks, focusing instead on his own platform.
We're putting a cap on the oil and gas industry's emissions to bring it down to net zero. We know we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
With the environment emerging as a key issue, especially for many young voters, both leaders are fiercely competing for their support in this campaign's final stretch. Lisa.
All right, Richard Madden, glad to have you back with Truth Tracker. Now, the facts behind the Conservatives' financial plans were revealed today, just hours before Erin O'Toole entered the debate hall. CTV senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor on the cost of those campaign commitments.
I am proud to unveil our detailed plan.
After making almost daily promises drawn from the platform they released on the second day of the election campaign, today the Conservatives put a price tag on their plan. $51 billion in new spending over 5 years. But that figure includes $27 billion in savings from cancelling the Liberals' $10 a day childcare plan starting next year, replaced instead by tax credits for families with young children. Without that cut, the Conservatives would spend about the same as the Liberals' $78 billion platform. This former parliamentary budget officer says daycare cuts could hurt the economy in the longer term by keeping more women out of the job market.
The biggest, opportunity to really grow participation overall for the economy is to increase female participation, women participation rates. And they're taking that money away.
We'll get our country.
The Conservatives have been under pressure to release the numbers behind their platform. Their big ticket item is a doubling of the tax credit for low-wage workers that would cost $24 billion over 5 years. O'Toole had promised a $60 billion increase in health transfers to the provinces, but that's mostly backloaded to later years. Over the next 5 years, the platform budget's for only $3.6 billion. Conservatives say they can still eliminate the federal deficit within a decade by using the parliamentary budget officer's estimates of economic growth and without the more optimistic 3% growth figure from their original platform. Lisa. All right, Glenn McGregor in Ottawa tonight. And we have some new information on the fallout from that gravel throwing incident in London, Ontario 2 days ago. CTV News has learned the People's Party has removed a member of its organization. Party signs were seen at the anti-vax demonstration at the Trudeau rally. The PPC, heavily criticized over the protest, now says Shane Marshall is no longer riding president for Elgin Middlesex London. The incident remains under a police investigation. When it comes to mask mandates, the province of Nova Scotia is about to drop theirs as part of the final phase of reopening 1 week from tonight.
Masking in indoor places and physical distancing will no longer be mandatory.
What will be mandatory? Proof of vaccination for anyone looking to participate in recreational or non-essential activities starting October 4th. WestJet has also announced mandatory vaccinations for all employees. Anyone not fully vaccinated by October 30th will face an unpaid leave or termination. Just over 77% of the eligible population has now been fully vaccinated. Today, Canada is reporting 2,400 new infections and 21 deaths. In the U.S., new stats show cases among kids are skyrocketing, especially those too young to get the shot. 1 in 4 new infections are now in children. That's led to 2,200 kids in hospital fighting the virus. With Canadian students back in class, parents and teachers here are hoping to get their hands on more rapid tests to help track transmission. CTV's Avis Favreau on where to find them.
In this box is a hot commodity, rapid tests, a do-it-yourself COVID swab. In less than 15 minutes, you'll know with reasonable certainty if you're infected or not.
If you haven't heard from us, then you're good to go.
This program in Waterloo, Ontario is called Stay Safe. It's handed out over 400,000 tests at no charge, supplied by the Ontario and federal governments to give business owners and families peace of mind.
We have unvaccinated family members, and we want to stay as safe as possible.
We were hoping to use them for keeping our family safe when we visit my 94-year-old grandmother this weekend.
With the return to work and school, risk of transmission is up, and so is the demand for self-administered tests.
I get emails daily from other regions wanting to know how do we set up this in their region, because they want this. Whatever we're doing in Waterloo region, they want it.
But these tests aren't easily available across Canada, and some are paying $15 to $40 per test at some pharmacies.
They're available in kind of a fragmented manner, but they're not being rolled out in a large scale.
Some say Canada has been slow to approve them, provinces slow to distribute them. Compare that to much of Europe, where the tests are widely available and used routinely.
You want to have it for breaking chains of infection in terms of a pandemic, then rapid tests are a much more efficient tool.
In fact, just a few weeks ago, a federal advisory committee told Ottawa that in the event of a COVID-19 resurgence, self-testing should be accessible at no cost and at various locations in communities. As for what happens to these recommendations on rapid testing, it's unclear, with Health Canada officials saying they're looking into it. Lisa?
Okay, we'll see what they decide. Thanks for this tonight, Avis. Today marked the first official day of the Taliban's new government, and it looked a lot like the old. They vowed to respect women's rights, just as they crushed dissent with acts of violence against female protesters breaking out in the streets. That's as more freedoms were stripped away. CTV's Tom Walters on the increased urgency to get those targeted by the Taliban out of that country.
Women whipped on a Kabul street as Afghanistan's Taliban government shows its face to the world.
They even arrested children of grade 7 and grade 8 of school, and they were badly beaten.
The UN says it is seeing little evidence of the Taliban's promised improvement in its treatment of women.
Every day we're receiving reports of rollbacks on women's rights.
Today, women were banned from participating in sports. With yesterday's cabinet appointments, the new Taliban has become hard to tell from the old Taliban, making U.S. efforts at diplomacy even more difficult.
We have to engage with them.
To engage with them, their new acting interior minister is a Haqqani network terrorist. He's wanted for a bombing that killed 6 people, including an American. He's believed to have participated in cross-border attacks against U.S. troops. There's a $10 million bounty on his head. Why are we engaging?
We're dealing with a reality world here where we have to engage in order to get American citizens and others out of the country.
But the promise to allow foreign nationals and their Afghan allies to leave is also in doubt. The U.S. blames the Taliban for half a dozen private flights left sitting on the ground in northern Afghanistan.
As of now, the Taliban are not permitting the charter flights to depart. They claim that some of the passengers do not have the required documentation.
The U.S. Secretary of State was speaking at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where thousands of refugees are still waiting to come to the U.S. and Canada. From Blinken and from the White House today, there were fresh warnings to the Taliban that international recognition and support will have to be earned, based not on their promises, Lisa, but on their actions.
All right, Tom Walters in Washington tonight. Now, about 2 hours away in Richmond, Virginia, a massive Confederate monument was taken down, removing a symbol of racial injustice. There were cheers this morning when the 6-meter-high statue of Robert E. Lee was lifted off the pedestal where it stood for 131 years. Crews then cut it in two to take it to a state facility until a decision is made about its future. The immediate future for a few communities in southern Ontario involves a major cleanup after an intense storm.
A disaster. Absolutely a mess.
From fallen trees to flooding, properties were pummeled by high winds, heavy rains, and hail after severe thunderstorms ripped through the area. Power was also knocked out in certain places. The extreme weather continued today near Kingston, where a waterspout was spotted spinning across Lake Ontario. Time for a 2-minute break, but when we come back, the City of Lights is looking for justice. The trial begins in the ISIS attacks that forever changed France. Plus, busting out the Bhangra to feed the need. The search for answers began today, years after a series of coordinated attacks in the city of Paris that stopped the world. 130 people were killed that night, And today, the lead suspect shouted from the dock about his treatment. CTV's Danielle Hamamjian on day one.
In a specially built courtroom designed for the biggest trial in France's modern history, the main defendant, Salah Abdeslam, was asked to state his profession. He then removed his face mask and said he'd given up his job to become an ISIS soldier. The victims always feel under threat of a new attack, said one of the many lawyers, especially when he's just a few meters away from them. In November 2015, 9 gunmen and suicide bombers struck within minutes of each other at the National Soccer Stadium, the Bataclan Concert Hall, and Paris cafes and restaurants, killing 130 people. Abdeslam is the lone survivor of the terror cell behind the deadliest attack in the country since the Second World War. Not all questions will be answered, said the survivor, but at least it will help us move on. Among those who will testify is former President François Hollande, who recounted the night of the attack. At 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, he said, I asked myself, what do I do? Should I even sleep? Has what just happened going to change our society?
Salah Abdeslam is one of 20 men on trial. The others are accused of helping to provide guns and vehicles and organize the attacks. The trial is expected to last 9 months. Danielle Hamamjian, CTV News, London.
And in a California courtroom today, the criminal fraud trial of Elizabeth Holmes began. The once billionaire founder of tech startup Theranos is accused of misleading investors about her blood testing machines and, quote, lying and cheating to get money. Her lawyers shot back, arguing her business simply failed and that failure is not a crime.
Prosecutors have to prove her state of mind. They have to show that she had a criminal intent to deceive, and that's pretty difficult in cases like this.
Theranos was worth $9 billion when media investigations revealed faults within the company. A legal win for Britney Spears. Her father has filed to end the conservatorship that has controlled the singer's life and finances for over a decade. The judge that oversees Spears' case will still need to approve the move. She appeared in court in June asking for an end to the conservatorship, saying it was abusive and blamed her father for the mistreatment. Still ahead, we have another viewer check-in as this campaign closes in. How housing factors into this voter's plans at the polls. Throughout this pandemic, a new contingent of everyday frontline heroes emerged. Essential workers like grocery cashier Alexandra Armstrong, who we first spoke to during the first wave in April of last year.
We're taking the proper safety measures in order to keep our customers and our staff safe.
Fast forward to today, and Alex is now grappling with a different kind of market. In tonight's Voters' Viewpoint, we check in on why housing is a critical election issue for so many young Canadians.
My name's Alexandria Armstrong. I'm 28 years old, and I'm originally from Colborne, Ontario. I used to work full-time as a front-end manager at Colborne Foodland, but I just recently moved with my boyfriend to Kirkland Lake, Ontario, and now I shop here. The draw to Kirkland Lake mostly was because houses weren't affordable down south anymore. The inflation is crazy and the house prices skyrocketed. We wouldn't be able to afford anything. It's sad because we couldn't even afford to live in our hometowns. We really miss our families and our friends back home. And that's something that you have to decide. You either want to move on up in life or you want to live with your parents until you're 40 years old. You don't really have a choice. I definitely see a future for my boyfriend and I up here. He's got a great job. We are already on our first way to finding our forever home, and everything just seems to be going great for us.
That is a reality check. After the break, some new moves in the Maritimes. The Bhangra postcards from a picture-perfect hometown. In the early days of this pandemic, we highlighted some pretty amazing Bhangra dancing in Canada's north. Well, tonight, far from Yukon, we take you to the Maritimes, where similar moves are now a movement. Here's Todd Battis on the students who dance.
Not the image typically associated with East Coast song and dance, but as they help define the modern image of the Maritimes, a group of South Asian students is putting a new spin on the region's music. It started as a way to meet friends, other students, to share a passion for dance and the landscape with faraway families.
We are creating dance projects where we are mixing the dance, Bhangra dance, the one we do, with the dances here in Nova Scotia with different communities, as in Scottish dancing and Irish dancing.
The dances became something like postcards from their adopted home. Videos uploaded to social media caught on with an audience well beyond friends and relatives.
We are very grateful for the people around the world, but especially here in Nova Scotia, who have given us so much love that now people around the world are watching what we are doing.
The Maritime Bhangra group has turned fun into activism, raising awareness of diversity and money for Nova Scotia food banks.
The idea of joyful activism was something which came from us trying to understand this new world we became a part of after we opted to come here and study.
As members of Maritime Bhangra moved and traveled across Canada, so have the musical videos, like this one from Montreal. Still, their hearts and feet beat hardest on the East Coast. Todd Battis, CTV News, Halifax.
Joyful activism. I like the sound of that. That's it for us tonight. I'm Lisa Laflamme. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and we'll see you again tomorrow.